welcome to the Rock Nation podcast, where real people in real relationships are meeting needs in real ways. Today's guest is Efrem Jackson. Efrem is an Iowa State graduate with a master's degree in financial planning and services and has worked in the financial industry for over 20 years. In 2010, he founded Free to Serve Financial Ministries, a faith-based financial education organization dedicated to helping people experience true financial freedom and pursue lives of passion and purpose. He's with us today to discuss the topic of financial decision-making during the pandemic. And I'm happy to announce that Efrem will be a regular guest on the show. So we look forward to having additional episodes featuring additional ways for financial freedom to occur. So that's going to be very beneficial, and we'll keep you posted on those things. Hello, Efrem, and thank you for being on the program.
Hey, thanks, Steve. I appreciate you reaching out to me and asking me to be on the show. I'm excited to be here. So, you know how I feel about finances, and especially now, with everything that's going on in the country, this is just such an important topic to talk about. So thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes. So before we get deep into those particular questions, why did you begin Serve Financial Ministries?
Yeah, that's a good question. I grew up without any financial knowledge, like at all. Like the only thing I got from my parents as far as how to take care of finances was like how to tell the bill collectors they weren't there, how to rig cable when it gets turned off, or how to do, I did not learn like the things you would want to learn about finances. And so I grew up without any knowledge about finances, and just found myself in a lot of debt and just drowning in debt. And, what actually happened around the year 2000, God blessed me and my family with some finances, like the most finances I've ever had in my life. Mm-hmm. And what do you think would happen when a kid from Southside Chicago who's been broke his whole life gets a very large check? Put it away. And so, that changed everything for me. And I said, you know what? And after that, God had started laying it on my heart and saying, hey, not only you are having problems with this, there are other people's having problems with this. And so I did a lot of work with Crown Financial Ministries and other financial ministry groups, and did teachings and facilitating, and same thing for Dave Ramsey and other groups. And then he just kept working on my heart saying, I need you to do your own. I need you to do your own. So that's kind of why it ended up launching in 2010. But it just really started from a place of knowing what it's like to struggle and knowing what it's like to go through pain, and not knowing that God had something to say about finances until I got connected with these other ministries. And so it just made me think, man, how many people don't know that? So,
right. Yeah. Well, thank you again for taking the time. And I know there's so much to talk about with regards to finances. And that's why, too, we want to have a regularly scheduled program and give you the opportunity to share those things. But specifically, again, today, we want to talk about what individuals can do during this pandemic. And so I'll start off with the first question. What are some smart things that people should be doing with their money during this pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we think about the pandemic and kind of everything is going on, even, my background is kind of signed as my daughter's crib behind me because I had to switch office locations here. But one thing about the pandemic is that we've been through things like this before. We've been through crises before in our country, so we're strong, we're resilient. We're going to bounce back from this. But there's lessons that we can learn, right? Because the past that we've done this before, right? Whereas the housing crisis or some other crisis before. And one of the best things I can tell people to do right now is to prepare for the long haul, right? Because I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. So I'd be on TV somewhere right now, but I don't have a crystal ball, so nobody can really tell us exactly when this is going to be over. I had an old supervisor. She used to always say, "Is it done?" When we were looking at projects, and so I can't tell you if this is done. There might be some extra fallout that comes out as if things peak or continue up. And I kind of look at it as we're kind of like a sailor or a captain going through sailing their ship through a storm. If I can use that analogy. And so we're in that perilous waters right now. We're on path to a certain destination, but we don't kind of know where it's going right now. So I'd say the very first thing, and people are going to hate that I have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, Steve. They're going to hate it, but I'm going to say it anyway. We have to start with the budget. We have to prepare some type of budget, because if we go back to that analogy with the captain at sea, if I'm a captain, I'm going through a storm. How do I manage through the storm if I don't even know what's on my ship? If I don't know what I've brought with me to help combat the storm? And so there's so many people that have never done a budget, have never looked at one. But I would encourage everyone, that is first step. That is the first step to get kind of an overall look at your overall picture. The next thing I would tell people to do is, because I'm telling people look for the long haul, we got to cut some discretionary expenses. Even in my own family, I've been doing that. And some people kind of doing that automatically because you're not traveling as much, you're not going out as much. But those discretionary expenses, I'd be looking at cutting a lot of those things just right now, just for a season, until we kind of know where things are kind of going. And then I'd be taking all of that and really beefing up savings right now. If someone's in a situation where they don't have some emergency money in place, and I can see that now where people have been getting laid off and they didn't have those things in place. So if you're fortunate enough to still be working right now, maybe you're working from home, I would use this opportunity as an advantage to beef up that savings right now and just go hardcore on it.
And hopefully too, I think maybe one of the things that we identify, we talk about this discretionary spending, and to cut some of that. I know I've experienced that already myself, and that I've decided, you know what, I don't intend to bring that back in. I don't intend to bring that spend back in.
Yeah.
I've been doing fine without it. Do I really need to go back to it?
I found the same thing, because one of the areas, even as a financial guy, there's still areas where people still struggle with. And one of mine was eating out, because I like to eat out. I enjoy a good meal. And so I've saved so much money now on eating out. I've kind of renewed my love of cooking, with my kids and with the family now. And so I agree. That's something I don't want to go back to, because it was unhealthy, one, right? And then now my kids have now gotten used to cooking dinners with dad more regularly. So it's a lot of good things. I always tell people your budget will tell you very quickly about what your priorities are in life and what you think is important. Because what you think, you can save one thing if you value one thing, but then your budget is going to show you where your money's flowing, and that really tells you what you really value. So.
Yeah. The tail of the tape. It's going to tell you
exactly.
Yeah, whether or not. So there's definitely some right things that people can be doing. What are some of the things that maybe financial mistakes that you've seen happening during this time?
Yeah, I've seen, because this is a unique time. I've never lived through anything like this before, and it's a very unique time. And so usually the mistakes that I've been seeing people make really revolve around a couple of things. It either revolves around FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. It revolves around that, or kind of group herd mentality, or around emotions. And so let me kind of further elaborate on that. So, for example, hoard buying. I see so many people were doing that at the start of this pandemic, and I still see people doing it now. Just buying tons and tons and spending money instead of diverting that money to savings and planning. They're diverting that money into unnecessary expenses because they were just hoarding things. And I almost, I got to tell you a quick story. I almost fell victim to this even myself when this all started. And I remember I was at Walmart, and you see people buying stuff, and I was buying some, groceries, and I see this guy like stacking up cans of green beans, like the big cans of green beans. He's getting like 3, 4, 5 cans of green beans. And so for a brief moment, that FOMO kicked in. And so I grabbed 2 cans of green beans too, because I want somebody, man. I'm like, oh, it was just more of my mind, like, well, I don't want him getting all the green beans. I want green beans.
What does he know that I don't know about the green bean, about the green bean market?
Right. Are we gonna have a green bean shortage? In 3 months, I need to know. And so I bought, and so my mind cleared up when I got to the register, right? So I finally, I came to my senses, and I looked at these 2, 3 big cans of green beans, and I was like, I don't even eat green beans. So I put them back. But how many people are doing that? Like, just that FOMO, that fear of missing out, and they're buying things that they don't really need. The other big mistake I see people making is emotional spending. because we're inside and we're quarantined, and so you can't do the normal things that you would do for stress relief. So some people like to get out and walk and do things. People are doing some of those things, but I heard one person say they were in Walmart and they were just walking around. They didn't have anything they wanted. They wanted to get out. They just wanted to be around people, so they just were walking around just randomly.
Yeah, I want people to know that Walmart is not a sponsor of the Rock Nation Radio podcast.
Yeah, I'm talking about green beans and Walmart, right?
You're going to do product placement and hold up a
for Walmart. But yeah, and then I've had even people in some of the Bible study groups I host and different classes that I host even say, yeah, I've been shopping a lot online with Amazon just to feel normal, just to buy something, just something to do. And so this emotional spending is huge. I didn't think it would be as big as it is, but I'm hearing it more and more where people are saying, yeah, I'm just buying stuff just because I want to feel normal. I just want to have something to do. And the other big thing I see people doing is, and this relates more to investments, is just panic selling, just the sky is falling, instead of actually having a plan and steering the course. But I think those are the main things I've been seeing people do, just that FOMO, that emotional spending, and just not having a plan in general. I think a lot of people, I think that's one of the worst things you can also do. Kind of the opposite side of that is just to do nothing, just kind of say, everything's okay. We'll be okay. Everything's fine. Instead of taking this time to actually be proactive, like I was actually saying earlier, and maybe cutting some expenses, beefing up the savings a little bit, maybe being a little proactive in case it does take another turn later on down the road and more people get laid off or something happens. So I think that's one of the worst things you do, is just kind of sit around doing nothing also is a big mistake.
So you mentioned about layoffs. So obviously there's I know, I'm sure you probably know some as well, individuals that either have lost their job or their hours have been cut. What are some practical things that individuals can do to improve their financial situation when that happens?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the last time I saw it was like over 30-some million people, filing for unemployment. So the numbers are just, near depression terms of when we have that, and we don't know where that's going to go. That might continue to increase. But, I always tell people to start by focusing on what you can control, right? So you always start there. What can you control? And if we go back to that ship captain, right, the guy steering the ship through the storm, there's certain things that person can and can't control, right? They can't control the weather. It's going to do what it's going to do.
Right.
They can't even always control their crew's reaction. So the reactions of other people around them, they can't always control that. But what can they control while they're going through the storm? They can control their own attitude and thoughts. They can control their own outlook, and they can take some actual action. So attitude, thoughts, attitude, outlook, actions, those are things you can kind of control. So along that vein, I'd say the first thing, I just want to encourage people to not lose hope. I know what that's like. If you, my wife went through a layoff with the last financial crisis in 2009. And so I know what that's like to have an income drop suddenly. And then you're kind of like, oh, what do I do? What happens? So I just want to encourage you, one, don't lose hope. This isn't the end of your story if you're struggling right now. And then the second thing I would tell people to do is kind of do what I was talking about earlier with that whole budget thing, man. But at this time, they're going to be doing a crisis budget, because how do you know exactly what you need if you haven't done the budget to know exactly what your expenses are and what you actually need? But if you're in a situation where you've actually been laid off or your income has been reduced, I want you to do it differently. I would advise them to do what's called a crisis budget. And so I won't go into detail into, how to do all that today, but basically you start off by doing a regular budget, right? And then you list out your expenses. You list out like your discretionary expenses, all those different things. You kind of categorize it. Like, here are my essentials. Here's what I absolutely need. Here's my debt payments. And then here's my discretionary. So you kind of have it in three little buckets, right? So when you go through that very first cut, I would tell somebody is immediately eliminate all discretionary expenses. Just for the first cut, just take them out. And then for your debt payments, that second bucket, just focus on, nope, I'm only going to pay just the minimum on these debts, nothing else, just for right now. And then go back to your essentials. So at the end of the day, you're going to be left with, okay, what are my essentials? What's my food, right? What's I got to take? What's my medicine, my medication if I need it? Take care of that. What's my utilities, my shelter? Take care of that. And if you need, transportation to look for jobs and things like that, yeah, take care of that. Everything else you might have to put on the back burner for right
Mm-hmm.
now, and know that that's okay. And know that that's okay if you're in a situation where you can't tackle everything. That's okay. That's fine. But the other thing I would tell people to do is, and this is a really big one here, is don't go dark on your bills or your creditors or things like that. You have to reach out and explain your situation. There's a lot of, be proactive, right? There's a lot of things companies are doing now with whether it's mortgages, and they're letting people for some of their mortgages, or even utility companies. I had someone reach out to me and said they had their car payments pushed back a couple of months and added back to the back end of the loan. So there's things that you can do, even
Right.
if you reach out to a creditor and all they tell you they can do is, well, we just won't add it to your credit report so it affects your credit. That's still something.
Right.
Right. So be proactive, reach out, do the budget. The other thing I would say is, if you're in that situation and it's really dire, make sure you're exploiting or taking advantage of all of the different benefits that are out there, any of the government programs that they recently released. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. Any community programs, where you're at, I'm sure you might be aware of some different programs or things that are doing food drives and doing things that are helping individuals out. Take advantage for all of that stuff. Do everything you can. And the last other things I'd probably tell somebody to do as it relates to that is, and this is more of a don't, because when you get in that situation, you sometimes get very you think, oh my God, what am I going to do? And you might make some bad decisions, because definitely avoid any predatory lending places. Stay away from those places as best you can while you're hunting for a new job and looking for new income and things like that. Those type of things, they like to take advantage of these type of situations, so definitely avoid that. And we're all in this together, right? So you got to be willing to ask for help. If, family, friends, things like that. I mean, we're all in this together. You ask your local church. I mean, I'm sure there's probably people hurting, and they're just too proud to say they're hurting.
Right.
So that's not a place we want anybody to be in, where they're too ashamed of their situation to go out and get the help that they really need to help them out.
And what I appreciate about this advice as well is that this is not relevant only in a pandemic environment like we're in. Anytime that, because even if they get a job tomorrow or their hours are restored tomorrow, it's still going to be, there's still going to be a recovery time.
Yeah.
To catch up if they have been, and all of these things. So all of this information here, and these to-dos and not to-dos, can be utilized anytime, and should be.
No, you're 100% right. I always tell people when I'm talking about this subject is how well you're going to be able to weather a storm is going to be directly related to how well you prepared before the storm happened. Right? A seatbelt doesn't do you any good if you put it on after you've already crashed. People don't
Right.
tend to, oh, I just hit somebody, let me click the seatbelt in. So yeah, these are all good lessons, even, after all this is over, because it's going to be over at some point. Like I said, America's a strong country. We've been through things before. We will bounce back. So all these actions are going to be good going forward, because I would say the worst thing you could do is, if you go through a situation, especially if you're struggling right now, I really would want to encourage people to adopt the philosophy of never again. Never again. Brand it on a t-shirt, do whatever you want to do. But in your mind right now, if anybody's listening to this and you're in that situation, say to yourself, I will never again put myself or my family in this type of situation again, where we did not have any reserves to rely on, where we had so much debt, where we couldn't figure out what to do next. When you get out of your situation, that is your marker. Never again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So individuals, what if they have investments, or they've been making investments? Is that something that they they continue with? A stash account, those types of things are investments. So they continue going forward with their investment plans, adjust those. What advice can you give there?
Yeah, no, that's a good question too. It really depends on which group we're talking to, right? Because if it's someone who was fortunate enough, they're still working, maybe they're working from home, Their income hasn't been slashed, and all that, and they were already putting investments and things like that in. Yeah, status quo, man. keep it flowing. Now, bear in mind that's assuming that that they have the savings and some of that other stuff I was talking about already, right? But because right now, big mistake people make with the markets is, which I'm sure you've already read this, is that most people, when it drops, they panic and they pull out and they sell everything. And so that, already now, the market has dropped from where it was in February, March, and has already recovered quite a bit since where it dropped. And so I feel bad for all those people that panicked and pulled out everything when it first dropped, because now you just missed out on the V-shaped recovery, the ride back up, right? So if you're in that situation where you were kind of doing that already, status quo, keep putting money in, keep funding your investments. If you're someone where your income has been slashed, or you've lost your source of income, or if you're someone who is fearful that your job might make some layoffs, or you've heard some rumblings in the office and you're like, oh no, and you don't have reserves, like a good 3 to 6 months of reserves set aside, then yeah, I would say you probably need to stop that for right now. Because if you're in crisis mode and water is coming in the ship, I need to start bailing the water out. I need to do something to stop the bleeding, versus still trying to get on course to the Bahamas or wherever the boat was going. So, I don't know why I'm stuck on boats today. I don't know.
Get out on the water, aren't you? You are ready to get out on the water. Yeah.
Man, I can't even swim that great, so I don't even know why I'm using all these boat analogies. So I don't know where it's coming from. Walmart and boats. Those are my secret sponsors for today, Steve.
Yeah, Walmart and boats. Yes, there we go. So you're a small business owner. I am, and I think individuals in our audience are as well. What can we do that impacted by the crisis? I know there's payroll protection program out there. What are some other things that they can do?
Yep. You mentioned the PPP, the payment protection. There's the EDIL, economic disaster loans that were in place there as well. So once again, make sure you're taking advantage of some of the different programs that have been placed for small business owners and things like that. Make sure you do read the fine print for some of those things too. If you do take an action, I did review a loan for someone recently that had gotten the EDIL, and it had some language in there about that, the SBA can take ownership of certain properties and things like that they weren't aware of. So yeah, make sure you just know what you're doing. But it's going to be very similar to what I was saying for the person that maybe had their income cut too. Because if you're looking at your business, it's time to look, maybe there's some unnecessary spending that you were doing in the business. Maybe there's some places where you can cut and trim the fat just a little bit in your business as well. But with that as well, as far as just not being afraid to look for new revenue streams. I guess the best way to think about it is, are you able to pivot? Right? Are you able to pivot? Because what a lot of small business owners do, and have been guilty of, is once you get your formula for your business, and once you get used to your formula, you don't like to change your formula because that's your formula, right? That's what you do. That's how it operates. But when times change, when economies change, when situations change, especially something as unique as we're in now, you have to remember to pivot. So if I'm, for example, I won't use boats or Walmart. Let's use restaurants. Let's use restaurants, right? So if I'm a restaurant owner, because they've been hit pretty hard. And if I was, fine dining, and that's all I did was it made all my business by people sitting in, okay, you could either hold on to that model and continue to lose, or you can pivot and say, okay, well, maybe I should do some different dining. Maybe I should do some delivery. Maybe I should do some pickup, curbside pickup. Maybe I should do. So you see people have been pivoting to work with the situation that they have. I've even seen some businesses, I think it was a brewery in Iowa, they switched to making hand sanitizer. That's a pivot. That's up somebody that said, you know what do I have? What does my business currently do now? And can I repurpose it to fulfill another market need? Right. Yeah. And so that's what they did. And they looked at it and said, well, we have all this equipment here. We can make hand sanitizer. And so they pivoted. And so I think that's one thing to consider for the small business owner is just make sure you're applying for the different programs. Make sure you're not afraid to pivot and just really go back to that budget and really see what you can cut. because you'll be surprised. There might be some things that you thought your business need,
Yeah.
but there might be a lot of leaner. You're a lean guy, so there might be a lot of lean ways to do that.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things. So my primary job right now, I work for Iowa State and the Center for Industrial Research and Service.
Yeah.
And I've been talking with a lot of manufacturers across the state, and they're doing just as you mentioned. They are identifying, hey, we have the capability here, we have the technology, the equipment to pivot and to produce some of these other things. It's also causing them to open up and look into other markets.
Yep.
And identify those other markets. So I'll put a plug out here too for Iowa manufacturers and for Cirrus. If Iowa manufacturers, if you're going through anything right now, struggles or anything right now, regardless of where you are across the state, certainly reach out to Cirrus, CIRAS. And also, if you're not in the state of Iowa, every state in the union has a manufacturing extension partnership. And they are set up to assist, particularly in times like this. And so I know there's funding and various programs for that. So small, medium, or large manufacturer, definitely reach out to your state's manufacturing extension partnership.
Yeah, that's so good. But kind of like I said, you just got to pivot. You got to pivot. I saw a lady that got connected through my main work, and she used to do yoga, yoga and that kind of stuff. And so she switched now. She's doing online yoga and desks and stretches and Pilates for offices. So she's been going out to different companies and saying, hey, can I get Zoom meetings with your employees as an employee work from home incentive? And yeah, it's been working. So it's different ways you can pivot. So I like that.
Yeah. So allow that creativity to maybe open up again markets that can not only keep you afloat now, but also enable you to expand and grow later on. I do want folks to know a couple of things. If you want to find more information out about Efrem and the work that he is doing, you can go to www.freetoserve.org. That's his website, and there's resources, there's information about classes, there's videos, there's blogs, a lot of information there. And then I would assume too you have your contact information on there as well. And use this time to let folks know too that this podcast is an outreach of the ROC Center. ROC stands for Renewing Our City, and that is a new community center that we are opening up in Cedar Rapids, but also going to be expanding out beyond that. So if you're interested in donating or helping support those efforts, go to www.therockcenter.org. Again, therockcenter.org, and have the opportunity to make some donations there and to help us put on programs like this and many of the other things that we're going to be doing there live. So Efrem, as we wrap up, are there any other thoughts that you have that just to share with individuals to let people know about their finances that would be helpful?
Yeah.
Beyond.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. There's just kind of closing just to kind of keep people in their back burner. And this is just more kind of reminders more than anything. And I think the first thing is that because we're going through such uncertain times, there's a lot of uncertainty here, but there is opportunity in uncertainty. And so I would try to remind people to look for the opportunity in the middle of the uncertainty. So are you using your time wisely when you're at home? This is the time that you could be beefing up your skills, that you could be learning about the stock market and how to invest. You could be learning about small business and how to start a business online, how to do social media campaigns. You could be learning, you could be finding the opportunity. I've seen some person went and they started sewing masks and selling them. They found an opportunity in the uncertainty.
Yeah.
So it's just about changing our mindset. So I would just really encourage people to do that. In this usually when a crisis happens, there's usually three groups of people that are going to be come out of that crisis. Millionaires will be made, billionaires will be made, and then you'll have onlookers. Those are going to usually be your three groups. So I just encourage people to find some opportunity there. And the only other last thing I would say is just really don't forget, this is a really important one to me, is just really make sure that you're continue to support your local churches, your charities, your little mom and pop, restaurants and things like that. If you're able to do that, if you still have income coming in and you can still support those places, they need you, they need your support, because in the middle of our finances and everything that we're going on there, we can still be a blessing to other people if we can. So.
Yeah. Well, Efrem, thank you again for being on the program. And again, it's been Efrem Jackson, with Free to Serve Financial Ministries. And as I stated earlier when we first began, that Efrem, hopefully he's going to be a regular, getting a regular rotation. And then also we'll be communicating. We're going to be bringing him either to Cedar Rapids, or he's in the Des Moines area, and we can do some things virtually as well. But we're going to be getting some classes going there that to help individuals.
Yeah, and if I can, Steve, one thing if I want to add, so if anybody wants some financial education and looking for some things related to that, if you go to my website, www.freetoserve.org/8steps, that is a free email course that I put together. It's real simple. You just sign up for it, and it's free. All you got to do is get your email, and it'll just email you different course material and study material. It'll even email, I think one of the days has like a little budget worksheet and things like that. So that's free. So take advantage of that if you want to learn a little bit more that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. I went through that when I was first introduced to you, and it's a great program. So I appreciate you making that available and bringing that up. Well, again, you've been listening to the Rock Nation podcast, where real people in real relationships are meeting needs in real ways. Thank you again. God bless, and we'll talk to you next time.